is going on to all my Barry fans out there, and welcome back to my channel, MovieFiles. We are here today to break down and discuss this fourth and final season, and we're talking about episode 8, which is the series finale, simply titled Wow. And wow is definitely one word that comes to mind that I would use to describe this finale. We got so much to discuss, but first, I want to talk to y'all in the comments. What did you think about the finale? What worked? What didn't work? Did you end up feeling satisfied or disappointed by the finale? What was your overall thoughts of this fourth and final season, and what will the legacy be of this series titled Barry? Let's have those discussions in the comments below. We got a finale to break down. Full spoilers ahead. As we open with the Raven getting a call from Hank, who's trying to make peace, as the Raven doesn't want to talk nor meet, but once he sees Hank has Sally, but more importantly, he has Barry's son, we see he changes his tone and he's headed to meet with Hank. Now we see Hank speaking to Sally about how Barry makes you feel like you believe that he can help you out, as he wishes her and John good luck because their fate isn't up for him to decide. Now cut to Barry doing his best Neo impression from the Matrix as he returns to the store for guns. Gotta say, watching this hitman serial killer walking through the store, passing all these families with assault rifles attached to him is definitely an ultimate scary reality of the gun control that we suffer with in today's climate, as Barry is preparing to go to war to save his manufactured family. Now we see the press conference being held on the reopening of Jana's case, as we see Jim tells the public that Gene is responsible for killing his daughter and all he wants is justice for Janice, as we see Gina's watching this. Now I know it's innocent of proven guilty, and I know that there's going to be a case and a trial ahead, but am I the only one that was kind of surprised that Gene managed to walk away from last week's moment with him being in a literal room with a DA, Jim, and a police officer? Very surprised that he was able to make it out of that room without being handcuffed. But back with Sally, John wants to know what's happening, and for the first time ever, Sally tells him the truth. Now she tells John that his parents are fugitives and that his father killed a lot of people, and not because he's a soldier, but because he's a murderer, and she's one as well. We see Sally comes to realize that she deserves whatever is about to come to her, but John doesn't deserve this life because he's a good kid and that he's always done the right thing. Now to me, this was a great callback to the words that Barry latched himself onto seasons ago when he was told that he was a good person. This acknowledgement of Sally realizing that she's a bad mother and has been method acting for the last 8 years was such a great example to me of this episode, having the main characters finally coming to terms with them living a lie and creating a new story for themselves in order to forget who they used to be. But I also believe Sally saying over and over again that she's sorry to John as she's crying and having him hug her, and maybe John not really completely understanding or processing everything she just told him, but the fact that he still hugged her and accepted her, the real her, to me, the moment that she finally became his mother. The Ravens men head to Hank. We see the players are being all set in place, and we have the standoff between the two different groups. Now the Raven doesn't want Sally, he just wants the kid, or else he's going to walk away from this deal. As they gather John, we see the Raven tells Hank that he's lucky that Barry fell into his lap, but he's also lucky to have come across this empire that was handed to him on a silver platter. But then he poses a question to Hank: at what cost? As he brings up the love of his life. Now I want you all to notice that the Raven and this new made up version of Hank was put aside during this scene, as Fuchs admits that he created this false narrative and this image of him being a soldier who never fought in the battle of his life and him being a fake mentor to men like Barry, but it all changed when he was beaten every day in prison and he realized he was a man with no heart. Now Hank doesn't want to believe that he's anything like Fuchs as he's throwing insults at him, and we see Fuchs pitches him a new deal. The deal is very simple. He'll walk away forever. All Hank has to do is to reveal his true identity and accept that he killed the love of his life, Cristobal, and that he was scared and he created this new person to forget what he did. Now, if you look at this scene again for a second there's only two people in this room really. Hank and Fuchs are the only two people that are there. No protection, no Sally, no John. Forget the fact that Barry's coming to kill them both. We're just witnessing two people who, like Sally in the previous scene, reveal themselves in a moment of vulnerability. As John finally enters the room, we see Fuchs looks at him and sees something familiar, which to me speaks to Fuchs seeing a version of when he met little Barry for the first time and he wants to handle things a lot differently. As Hank stops crying after showing his true self, he goes back to the person he created and kills the deal, which ends up getting him killed along with all of his men. As we get this Quentin Tarantino-like scene of complete chaos and carnage as all the men begin to kill one another, as we see limbs flying over the place, we have a grenade being thrown. It's a complete massacre. Now the camera pans over, we see that Fuchs is covering John to protect him, and he wants to get him to his father, showing that he does have a heart. Barry finally arrives and he is prepared to die as he prays to God that he's willing to sacrifice himself for John, and that by doing this he will redeem himself and he will sit next to God in his rightful place in the kingdom of heaven. Wow, Barry, delusional in this moment here. As we know, Barry was looking for a sign from God 2 episodes ago. Well, it appears that this sign that he was looking for and his prayers have come true as he's reunited with John without having to sacrifice himself. But we get a very special moment between another father and son-like relationship between Fuchs and Barry. As John hugs his dad with happiness, Barry and Fuchs say no words, but they just give each other a look that says it all. Barry knows he left him in prison to rot, and Fuchs knows that he created a monster hitman, but both say sorry without actually saying the words. As Fuchs' way of saying sorry in this moment for all the years of manipulating Barry is by protecting and saving his son, as he runs into the shadows like the legend of the Raven is known to do. As we cut back to Hank, who's on his dying breath, he looks up at Cristobal as we get one of the saddest shots of this episode as he holds the hand of the love of his life one last time before he dies. I'm not gonna lie, I definitely got emotional saying goodbye to NoHo Hank. I want to thank you, NoHo Hank, for being one of my favorite characters on TV in the last 5 years. But speaking of goodbyes, it's time to wrap up this episode. Back together as a family, we see Sally sees and reads the article about Gene being the murder suspect in the Janice case, and she knows this isn't the truth. As John lays between them, almost like a perfect example of the manifestation of a lie being created between these two 8 years ago, it's time for Barry to face his own truth as Sally tells him he has to turn himself in order to make things right. But like Hank, Barry doesn't want to face the truth, and he wants to believe that God answered his prayers and he's been spared and he has been redeemed. Talk about wow. Barry doesn't want to take accountability nor responsibility for his actions, but I'm not going to lie in this moment. I said to myself, did Sally really take responsibility of what she allowed Barry to do to cover up her murder? Very curious about your thoughts on that. But as we cut to the next morning, Barry wakes up to find his family is missing, and he immediately heads over to Gene's house. Now at Gene's house, he's locked himself in the bedroom to look at all the stories of him being guilty, and there's even an article of his son Leo completely throwing his father under the bus. Now I want to point something out, and that is the stories being said about these characters being the driving force of this final season. Barry not wanting Gene to tell his side of the story, Gene not wanting his version of the story of Janice being told, Sally not wanting her story to be written by Hollywood of her 15 minutes of fame, and even NoHo Hank not wanting the story of him killing the love of his life because he was afraid. The stories and the narrative is such an important key factor of this finale. As Tom pretends to be the last friend that has Gene's back, we see that this was all a lie because he's all packed up and ready to leave, and he doesn't want to be looked at as a potential accomplice in this case involving Janice. As he opens the door, Barry has arrived. We see Barry is screaming for Sally and John as Gene is in the other room getting that gun that was gifted to him as he's ready to finally use it. We see Tom tells Barry that this is such a coincidence or a sign that Barry arrived at this exact point because Barry is the only one who can save Gene. As Barry has his chance to redeem himself and save someone close to him, very similar to what Fuchs did to him earlier, but the question is, will Barry pay it forward? As the camera zooms into Barry's face, we can see that he's made up his mind, and more importantly, Barry realizes he's never gonna see his family again, and he drops the lie and wants to take responsibility of his actions as he tells Tom to call the police, and he wants to turn himself in, and bang! Gene shoots him in the upper chest as Barry says, wow, as if he wouldn't ever imagine Gene taking that shot. As Gene shoots Barry, in the head, killing him. As we cut to back, we see Gene sitting there and we pan out to see Barry Berkman is dead. I want to take a moment to appreciate the extraordinary work from Bill Hader, not only from what he brought to this character, but the amazing work he did directing these episodes, writing these episodes. I will also remember him being a master storyteller and Barry being one of the most simple but also complex characters on TV in recent memory. Now, as this scene goes, there's a few things I want to point out. It's so ironic that Gene could have avoided life in prison after what he just did if he would have simply allowed Barry to live, but I would imagine killing Barry must have been the most just thing that was in Gene's mind. But again, seeing both characters wanting their version of the story to be out there ended up ending them both. The fact that both men came to LA for one thing, and that was for Barry to kill Gene, and Gene wanted to kill the movie, but both ended up killing each other. One clearly dead and the other serving life in prison because they allowed their past selves to be their demise. Gene wanted fame, Barry wanted revenge. As we end the episode with another time jump that was maybe 8 to 10 years into the future, as we see Sally, now an acting teacher, on stage getting a round of applause from the audience, as we see John now being played by Jaden Martell, who looks at his mom with happiness because of what she accomplished. We see Sally gets invited on a date by a new teacher, but she declines because you have to imagine that after her last two relationships, one being an abuser and the other being a hitman, falling in love isn't a top priority for Sally. As John is going to hang out with a friend for the night, we get a very special moment between the two characters. John asks if she's going to be okay when she's going home alone, and he tells her he loves her. Now, this moment to me gives us a look on that 8-year to 10-year time jump, and we get a better idea of what their relationship has become. Number one, we can see that their relationship has grown, but also Sally doesn't need anyone to make her feel safe anymore. But also do want to point out in this moment that Sally still needs a little bit of validation of her work as she asks John what did he think of the play. So it just goes to show that she's still just a little bit insecure about the quality of her work. But briefly going back on stage, for a moment there, I thought Sally was recreating her own version of the Barry Berkman story. But speaking of Sally, we see her driving home and she looks at the flowers that was given to her. And for a second, I was nervous that she was going to maybe get hit by a car, but no, she's looking at those flowers. And to me, this is literally her getting the flowers out of making it out of the events that we witnessed during this show. As I look at the Sally character, but also connecting it to Fuchs, as these were the characters who finally accepted their wrongdoings and they endured their pain of seeing their true selves with open eyes and the universe showing them mercy, versus looking at Barry and NoHo Hank being the ones who denied their true selves and were ultimately punished for waiting to the last minute to accept who they've become. Now, as my theory of John watching the Barry Berkman movie, which ended up being titled The Mask Collector, it ended up coming true to an extent, as we witness a big theme of the show come to light as Hollywood has completely changed the narrative. What we see play out in this movie is a version of the story that makes Barry turn out to be the hero. It's no longer a story about a soldier suffering from PTSD and becoming a violent hitman who lied to his acting teacher before murdering his girlfriend and inevitably threatening to kill his family, but instead is now a story about a military hero who accidentally got stuck in this war of drugs and crime, and he found out that his mentor slash teacher was the actual killer, and then he died at the hands of his teacher when he refused to take part of his world. By the way, I gotta point out the meta nature of seeing the movie was just so well put together and hilarious at the same time, which, by the way, this finale was extremely dark and had very little moments of levity, but this being one of them, I definitely would have paid a ticket to see this Barry Berkman movie in its entirety. But in all seriousness, I have a question for you all. Do you all believe that John, watching this movie, he saw his father as a hero, or did he see his father as the hitman killer that his mother told him about 8 years ago? Because to me, as we see the final text on the movie screen saying that Gene went to prison, but Barry was laid to rest at this cemetery with full honors, I personally believe that John remembered what his mother told him when he was an 8-year-old, and yes, he might have internalized that and he remembers what it might have meant, but I think personally, John wants to accept the fact that the man who raised him to be a good person, and not what the film or what everyone else, including his mother, had to say about the story of Barry. In conclusion, that's the show. John will have the comfort of knowing his father will be remembered as a good man, for better or for worse, but the facts aren't always what people want to believe, but instead, stories are what people want them to believe. And the thing this show and this finale proved was that everyone can tell a story, and wow, what a story Barry was. I will forever cherish and remember this story and this series as an all-time great series, not just for HBO, Max, but as one of the best shows in my book. Overall, I feel satisfied with this conclusion and think this season overall was one of, if not the best season of the series. But enough from me. What did you all think? Thoughts on the finale, the season, and what will you remember about this show overall? I want to take this time to thank every single one of you all for supporting these videos. I know Barry is an extremely underrated show, but I'm thankful to be a part of this community of the Burkheads, if you want to call ourselves that. I would be so grateful if you all can hit the like button, share this amongst the other Barry fans that you know that love the show just as much as we do. Please leave your thoughts in the comments again of what worked, what didn't work, your overall thoughts of the finale, the season, the series as a whole. Please leave your thoughts in the comments. And if you all appreciated my work on this breakdown, consider joining the community. Check out all my reviews that I've done for the show, Barry. Check out my most recent review, and we'll catch you all on the next breakdown.